Hi, everyone. I just thought I would give you a little update on what's been going on in my life. For those of you who are not familiar, I'll give you a little, very quick background. Um, Basically, as old as I am, I realized in the end of 2019 that most of my life had been dominated by the fact that I was suffering from post traumatic stress syndrome. Uh, from the time I was 14, I had had a major emotional trauma of abuse and emotional abuse. And I, I actually read The Count of Monte Cristo, and that put me on my journey to healing because I saw myself in Edmond Dantes and what he went through. I actually referred to myself as being in a mental chateau and that I had to get out of it, and I did. So the first half of 2020 was taken up with that. I was still reading the book into January, and when I finished, and I finished reading it, then what I actually did was I started writing a novel in my head. There were certain things in it because it was fictional but autobiographical to a large extent. I didn't want to write it. I couldn't. I'm a little more private than to be able to reveal these certain things, but I needed to work through them in that format. Um, excuse me, to be able to deal with them. I mean, that was my therapy to actually work them out as a storyline, which actually set in uh, Naples just before the unification happened. And but basically my family was my family, and I worked through who I was at 14 and who I was poised to become, and then when the trauma happened, I got derailed. So um, I worked through that over a few months, and I came to the conclusion that I had done a cycle. It's actually they call it now compound complex post traumatic stress disorder, and I had repeated certain patterns. I had many years ago. I had had a therapist say to me, "Do you ever consider that you married your mother?" And she was right, but I actually did it twice, and so I realized that I we had not been living really as a married couple. We were reasonably amicable, and he wasn't a total evil monster. But I realized that the marriage should have ended many years earlier, and it had to end now. And so I started making plans for that, and we did do it on the 1st of September 2020. I got divorced. The thing is, and I went to Italy. I went to Sicily to do an Italian course, hopefully to get my Italian citizenship through my father's bloodline and be there for the rest of my life. Well, I had been misinformed about being able to change my visa, but it was just as well because I came back after 3 months. And the course was online, so I was able to continue it. Because of COVID, they had turned it into an online course. So I was able to continue studying. I didn't lose those three. Well, I hadn't been in the class for 3 months. It was a little more than a month by the time they got started. But I thought I'd be able to finish it. So Jewish law requires a divorced couple to separate. They cannot live under the same roof at the time of the divorce hearing. You have to be separated, which I had done. I had gone to a hotel for a few days because I knew I was going to Italy, and so I uh, uh, I came back. I did have to go back to our marital home because I hadn't prepared a home for myself here, thinking not I wasn't coming back. And it was okay because we had a large flat. I had my own bedroom and bathroom, and I had to quarantine anyway for 2 weeks. They made I was fine. I had a negative PCR test, but they made me quarantine, and so I didn't have that much interaction with him. Although he was decent. He helped, and I have to admit I didn't stay locked in my room. I got up and went into the kitchen and got food or whatever I needed. So but it was okay for those 2 weeks. And in that period of time, I started looking for a place to live, and that's how I came to move to Haifa. But a little more than a week after I came to Haifa, he died very suddenly. And he had been apparently healthy. He was several years younger than I am. And it was a real shock. I mean, I was over the marriage. It's not like, oh, I lost my husband. But to lose this person that I had been in a close relationship with for over 30 years and to have lost him so suddenly, and and he comes from a line of long-lived people. His father was still alive at 97 and alert and strong, and as far as I know, he still is. And so I had to deal with that shock. So that took up the first half of my year pretty much. And I went through several things. Well, it prevented me from going back to Italy. The original plan when I came back to Israel was to apply for my student visa and then get on the plane and go back to Catania, but I couldn't do that. So anyway, I muddled through. I got through the first part of the year pretty well, okay, because I was running on adrenaline. Then I sort of crashed, so I hadn't been able to renew my American passport here in Israel. I couldn't get an appointment for a couple of years already. So I decided to try in Napoli, and I got one. So I got on the plane and went to Napoli and Palermo for 2 weeks. And then I came back. I had decided at that point before I went that I would try again to get my documents from New Jersey for my citizenship because it's kind of complicated. They want the vital statistics are not public record in New Jersey, and so you have to show a lot of proof that you're the person that whose records you want, or you're related to them, and you have to show pretty good proof of that. So I, the first time back in 2020, I didn't send them I didn't send them exactly what they needed, and because my American passport was expired, so I only had in English I only had a couple of things, and they wanted something with my mailing address. Now that was a problem because um, everything I got in the mail was in Hebrew. My American bank was completely online. They didn't, I even asked them if they could send me a statement by regular mail, and they couldn't. So I didn't have the current letter from Social Security because I hadn't had any need for correspondence from them. So this was back in 2020. So uh, I didn't have everything New Jersey required. But the thing is, by the time they got back to me, they told me I only had 5 days to produce it, and there was no way I could because I would have needed translations, which are expensive. I could have had an electric bill from Israel translated, but to show my address, but I didn't have time to do that. So uh, uh, I couldn't apply for citizenship when I was there in 2020. So I thought I decided to try and do it again last in 2021, and I sent off a bunch of stuff. I now had some proof in English that I could send, And I got a letter in October telling me that still one or two things was that they still needed something else. I can't remember what was inadequate, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But in October, I had a current passport. I mean, they accepted my Israeli one because it was in English, but I needed two other pieces of ID, with at least one of them having my current physical address on it, where I receive mail. So I I don't know if I guess I didn't have, I don't know why I didn't have that. I guess I had one piece, but I didn't have two. I didn't have another, excuse me, English piece to send in July or something. I don't know. I think what it was I sent my Israeli driver's license, but by the time they got to it, it had expired. That's what happened, and so I had to go back and then, of course, my phone bill was too old because it was more than 3 months old. So, but at this point, I had my current American passport. So I sent both passports. I just happened to get a letter from Social Security that month, and I was able to send that and my current phone bill, which is in English because I use a reseller that caters to it, the English speaking market. So I think I have everything, and I should be getting those documents, but it can take up to 12 weeks for them to process the applications, and that'll bring me maybe into February. So if they get it done a little faster, I'll be okay, but I don't know. So uh, they should have had it by the middle of November. So anyway, so that's in the works. But when I originally had this plan to do this in 2020, my ex-husband was alive. He was obligated to pay me um, alimony and the marriage contract, the Jewish marriage contract. The alimony was actually separate, and not everybody gets alimony. You get your marriage contract, and that's written in, the amount of that is written in stone. It doesn't matter what your circumstances are from the time since you got married. That's your contract, and that's what he has to pay. I did, he did one thing during our marriage which sort of I didn't realize the seriousness of it. But when I decided to bring it up in the hearing, and I was awarded damages for that. So that was the alimony part. So he didn't have the contract price in one lump sum. So, but I agreed to take it in monthly payments because what could I do? So he was giving me a pretty generous monthly payment, and on top of my American Social Security. So I was all right. I would have been able to support myself if I had gotten my citizenship then. But now that he's gone, I lost that money. He didn't have life insurance. He had no estate to speak of. So I didn't get any of that money. My marriage contract or alimony or anything. So my monthly income here in Israel is adequate, but if I move out of the country after 3 months, they'll take away the money that the state of Israel is giving me, and I won't have enough. I'll only have American Social Security, and that would pay my rent maybe a little bit more. So, but not enough. So I realized that I wouldn't be able to achieve this dream of living in Sicily. And it's stronger now because I don't feel as comfortable in Israel, to be perfectly honest, since he's gone. A lot of it was because he wanted to be here, and I wanted to be here too. But I realized that my desire to be here had a lot to do with being married to him and, wanting to have more of an immersed Jewish life. And the truth is, I really don't want that. I have moved away from being religious. But I'm not a complete heathen or secular. I still believe and have a spiritual life. I believe that what is I'm about to talk about is completely from God. And actually, he's the one who brought me back in December of 2020 because if I had been in Italy when Yeshua died, it would have been a big mess. I don't even know if or when I would have found out, and I would have had to come back anyway, and I might not have been able to go back. Um, I wouldn't have been able to go back right away. So it would have been a total disaster had I been able to stay there. So that all worked out better than I could have planned it. Anyway, uh, so I'm not as comfortable in Israel as I am in Italy. Um, I'm struggling more with the language, especially the reading. I've started being able to read a little bit. People are more closed here. It's harder to even have casual social interaction with people. In Italy, especially Sicily, people are very warm and extend themselves to strangers, and you can have a conversation with somebody on the street, you know. And even with COVID, as a matter of fact, people were pretty well flaunting the mask mandates. I think they got a little more strict about it since I was there because they went to the Green Pass the day before I left in July, and but the Italians are smart. I did my PCR test and I got a 48-hour green pass before I came home. So anyway, I think if I'm going to be isolated and not have an actual social circle, I'd rather be in Italy. Uh, uh, my Italian's far from fluent, but it's a lot better than my Hebrew. And of course, reading isn't a problem because it's the same alphabet. So, as English. So, I just, all things considered, I would rather be there. And so I decided I finally got a handle on what my financial situation is in around September. Everything had settled down. There had been a little glitch with my American Social Security, and they said it could take months. Well, it didn't take months, but now they told me they had overpaid me at some point, and so now it was going to change. Now it's all straightened out, and I got a small raise from Israel, and of course, Social Security went up this month. So, but I had all that information at hand by October. So once all that was settled, and I knew exactly where am, and with my expenses. The other thing was my landlady was not wanting to renew my lease. She wasn't. She's not a bad person, but I think she was really concerned, even though I paid the rent without any problem the whole past year. I think she was a little concerned. What I really think is she wanted to raise the rent, and she was afraid that even another couple hundred shekels would break me because she didn't, but she didn't want to ask. She's an ultra religious woman, and she tends to be a little rigid, but she also tends to be very deferential in her approach. And so and she's a professional woman. She's an architect, so she is a businesswoman and a professional, educated woman. So she does know how to speak to people, but it's just that ultra religious culture is very discreet and, as I said, what's the word now? I used deferential. So I think she didn't want to ask me for more rent, and but I did try to find an apartment, but I was getting into late October, and everybody was saying, "Oh, it's too soon. Come back in a month." And that's not unusual in Israel for people to wait till the last minute. But most people have somewhere they can go. They have a relative that or they have neighbors or someone they can stay with for a few days if an apartment needs to be cleaned, or people move out over Shabbat and they don't want to move in on Shabbat, whatever. And so I was very anxious, and so I did write to her and I said, "Look, I really am not in a position to move. I'd have to pay a mover. I can't deal with the stress. I'm only just starting to get uh, over the shock of what I went and difficulty of what I went through this past year. But I will, uh, if it makes you feel better, I will offer you an additional 200 shekels a month, and I can do. I know I have all my money straight, and I know I can do that without any problem." And she did accept it, so I didn't have to move. And she wants to get everybody on the same date. I don't know what's going on exactly in her head, but instead of giving me a full year renewal, she gave me only until the end of August. So if I can start generating some income, which I would need, whether I I would need anyway to be able to go to Italy. I have a couple of options, uh, visa options. I could always re-enroll in that course. It's not it's given by the university, but it's a language course that anybody can enroll in. It's not, you don't have to qualify to, all the only qualification is that once you are enrolled, they test you to see what your level of Italian is. So, if you have any. So, I could do that again if I can get some income going. But what I came up with when I was looking at the visa page back in um, the spring, because I was looking at student visas then, uh, there's a self-employment visa. They give out a limited number of them. I think they do it once a year, and I think I have to get on that because I think they do it in March or April or something, if I remember what I read correctly. And so uh, you have, obviously you have to be employed, but I don't know exactly. They weren't too specific about what they wanted to see in terms of actually being employed. Not people just going there and saying, "Oh, I'm an artist or I'm a musician and I'm going to play on the street." And I've been doing that, and I've been selling on the street, and I've been making so many euros a month. That's not a problem. I Since I do have my American Social Security, uh, which is portable, of course. It's not enough for me to live on in Sicily, but it's a good hunk. It'll cover my rent and maybe a little more. So I don't have to prove 100% income. Also, it's not just that I want to be self-employed in Italy. I have a right to citizenship. So once I can finally get that straightened out and become a citizen of Italy, Italy will give me 500 euros a month. I don't know that I can do that within the 3 month tourist visa um, uh, for a time frame. So that's why I need to have some income. So what I did was I decided I was going to really return to art, which is something I have done all my life. This is not a Grandma Moses uh, late interest in a hobby turned into a career kind of thing. I have always been an artist because of the post traumatic stress and the difficulty of breaking into the art world. I was not able to do it when I was young. But the thing that has changed is the internet and computer generated high quality prints. And I've what I decided to do was to start out by creating a body of work. I have a few drawings and a couple of paintings, and they're on. I started another. I opened a Facebook page called Arte Lettieri, and you can get to it from my regular Facebook page. And it's I'm creating the original artwork, but I plan to print it and sell it as prints, high quality prints. These are not original artist prints. I want to make that very clear. When you get a computer generated print of an artwork, it's a computer generated copy of an artwork. It's not the same as buying my painting, original painting, or my original drawing. It doesn't have the intrinsic value of having been made by my own hand. It has some value. If my original work has any value, then the prints have some value because they're representing me. But as pieces of art, they're not. They're just not pieces of art. And I could put 1,000 signatures around the border. That doesn't make it an authentic artwork. And you shouldn't buy anything by any artist that is not an actual original art print. If it's a computer generated print, it's like buying a poster of your favorite rapper or whoever. That's all it is. The quality may be a little better, but it doesn't have any intrinsic value as a work of art. And but I think they're great for people who appreciate art, who want something beautiful in their home and can't afford thousands of dollars in original work. But as long as you understand that that's what you're buying, that you're not buying something that's going to increase tremendously in value and or have any real intrinsic value. It might be that if I signed one of these things and I did become famous, my autograph might have some value. But you have to be very careful. There's a lot of fraud in art. I hate to say it, but it's true. So I, but I decided that there is a valid purpose to good quality computer generated work. That will on good quality paper that will last, and it should uh, like any nice quality decorative item you put in your home, you might pay a few hundred for it. But again, as I said, if I were to become a very famous artist 50 years from now, those prints wouldn't be worth a whole lot. There are authentic art prints that are done by an artist's own hands, but there's something entirely different. And those are usually numbered in less under and they should be under there should be under 1,000 pulled and preferably even under 500. And many artists have done this, and there are various media of fine art prints, original fine art prints. There are etchings, there are lithographs, there are um, block prints, which you can carve in linoleum, you can carve in wood. There's there are some other processes that I'm not all that familiar with uh, because I didn't get to taking a printmaking class when I was in art school. Uh, Although it was part of the curriculum, I just hadn't done it yet. So um, uh, there's one that there's something where you do it on glass in reverse and then you print it. But they most of those, with the exception of a silk screen, which can also be an original artist created print, uh, are put through a press. So if you hold the paper up to, you'll see that there's a little bit of an embossing from the plate. And that's one way you can tell that it's an authentic print by that artist. Um, as I said, with the exception, silk screens don't go through a press, but you would feel the actual ink on the paper, you would know that it wasn't a computer generated item. So, but it can be difficult. But that's different. That's different from mass producing computer copies of an artwork, and regardless of how high quality, how much um, resolution the computer has, it doesn't matter. It's still just a mass produced product. Anyway, so I digress there a little bit. But as I said, if somebody understands that and they want to pay a couple hundred shekels or a couple hundred euros for something that they consider beautiful and that they want in their home, I don't have a problem with that as long as they understand what they're buying. And so I plan to do that's one of the things I plan to do. I don't have a lot of artwork, original artwork that I've created, things that I created years ago. I don't even know what I did with them. I may have sold a couple. I may have given some away. I may have simply discarded some that I didn't think were good enough. But I I have a couple of drawing. I have one drawing that I brought with me from the United States, and I have other. I started a. I did two paintings since I'm here. I decided on doing this, and I have another little drawing that I did in pastel. And so that was my. So I made that decision about the beginning of November. I said I have to have a purpose in life. I have to do something. Ideally, I'd like to be able to generate some income. I have no ability to go out and get a job. I have no skills. I don't speak the language. I don't want a job, you know. And actually, if I got a salary job, I'd lose money from that I'm getting from Social Security here, and it would probably I might be worse off. But I really am not qualified for a job. So uh, for a lot of reasons. So a job wasn't on the table. I don't absolutely need the income here in Israel, but I needed something to do. I needed a purpose. I needed something to occupy me meaningfully. And so I decided it was going to be artwork. And then from whether I made money at it or not, then I said, well, no, I can try to make money from it, but I have to do it as a business. I have to approach it as in an entrepreneurial business-like way. And so that's what I've done over the last several days. I found a printer who's right up the street. He's excellent. He's one of the best in Israel. His son is a professional photographer. He can photograph my canvases in high resolution photography and then send them to it's his father. The printer is his father to actually print because the printer can't scan canvases. He can scan flat drawings, but anyway, so that all fell into a place. The printer is maybe 100 meters from my house in one direction. His son is a little further in the opposite direction, but not much, maybe 200 meters. Uh, so off my corner. So uh, that's where I said, oh, that's where God came in. He put this together because I knew that printer was there, but it just never computed because I never thought it was something I was going to need. I did at that point I didn't realize he did framing too, and but he does. But anyway, and he does simple things like business cards. So I went there yesterday. I got this all straightened out. I saw the son today and talked about what he would charge me to photograph canvases, and he wants to do a lot of them. So I have to do a few more paintings before I hire him to do that. So this is going to be a process of a couple of months before I have sellable product. But it's not all that expensive because now for printing you don't have to do a minimum quantity. It's not like years ago where the setup was so involved that it didn't pay to do less than 100 or 500 or whatever. So now, if I want three of a particular painting, I get an order for three prints he can print me three, and it doesn't cost me any more than it's not there's not a savings in doing 100 of them. So it's all the same to him, and so I so it's very cost effective for me to be able to do that. And I set up an Etsy store and found out that Etsy actually works as the banker. So as soon as they get an order, I get the money. So I get an order from Etsy. Somebody wants a certain piece. I can run to the printer, have him run it off, and mail it. And I have the money to pay him for that. So uh, also, our post office is set up to handle this kind of business. I only looked at it very briefly last night, but um, when I need it, I can take my pieces to them. It's a little bit different than the ordinary mailing. I don't just have to stand in line and mail it like I was mailing a package to a private individual, a personal package. So they have a business service, and I'm not sure everything that's involved. So this is what I've been doing, and I find myself wearing three hats. I have this business aspect, I have the creative aspect, and I still have to take care of myself in practical ways. I have to buy my food, I have to cook my food, I have to do my laundry, I have to keep my house clean, I have to make sure I'm not overdrawn at the bank. And so, I'm suddenly I'm three people in one. So, uh, uh, but it's exciting. It's invigorating. Something happened last night that there might be something else going on in my life that I thought had I it had sort of started almost a year ago, and I thought it was finished, but it looks like it's not finished, and that can affect me. But if I can get the self-employment visa, as soon as I get to Italy, I will apply for my citizenship. By God's grace, I'll get it in record time, and I'll have my because Israel will let me keep 3 months worth of my money um, after I leave the country, and but then it's finished. Okay, and so I that's something that I have to factor in because I have to have while for those 3 months that and my American Social Security will be more than enough for me to live on. But I have to be able to cover the gap until the citizenship comes and Italy starts giving me 500 euros. So that's where turning the art into a business has come in. And a couple of the pieces I've done are really more decorative pieces than fine art. And so those can be turned into t-shirt transfers. Once I get to Italy, they can maybe be turned into some other merchandise, and I think I can do this. I think I can make some money uh, and start making a name for myself in fine art. I have some artist contacts in Sicily, and whether they would help me or not is another question. With like a show or something, or being part of a group show, is another matter. But this is why I don't want to just produce in original work and then sell it. I want to have a body of work, a collection of my own stuff that I can at least mount an initial show. And if I want to sell from that show, I'll be in the I'll be into the art world. I'll be starting. People will know my name, and um, I'll be producing more work as I go. And so we'll see. Uh, but I really want to be able to move to Italy to do this, and I'm hoping to do it by September because, as I said, my lease ends August, and that's something I didn't actually mention. If I leave the country more than one time in a 12-month period, they'll take away the money at that point. They won't give me the 3 months. But if I wait for the full 12 months to elapse, then I can collect for 3 months. And because I went in July, that means August 1st is the earliest I can leave again. So things have eased up here in Israel. They're allowing tourists in. Some of the venues are allowing people without green passes. I could actually eat inside a mall if I wanted to. And this is just as of this week. I'm hoping that Italy gets the hint and does the same thing. So I've talked long enough. This is about the fifth time I've tried to make this video. And anybody who tells you, "Oh, just go start a YouTube channel, oh, it's easy." No, it takes a lot to talk to a screen and be coherent. And you can't really write out a script or it'll show. You have to be able to talk. So here I am, and I'm going to say goodbye and talk to you soon.